for this afternoon's special segment today. So, with that being said, now I first connected with Sherri on through Twitter, and Sherri posts some great content on Twitter. That's how we kind of got connected with each other. And I definitely felt like, okay, this is someone I really have to call into my live stream and talk about job search stuff. So, an introduction regarding Sherri. So, Sherri Edwards offers coaching services for individuals pursuing a career change or those needing guidance in moving their careers to the next level. Her clients learn how to identify their workplace demand and value and how to market themselves effectively to obtain the type of work that fuels their passions and allows them to live their dreams. Sherri's comprehensive understanding of the nuances of the job market and workplace from both the candidate, employee, and also the employer perspectives helps her serve as a bridge builder over the hectic waters that separate the two. Sherri integrates an individual's values and life goals with the re-employment process by helping them determine what type of role or organization will be a fit. Together, they analyze the type of work they will be most immediately competitive for and design a strategy for achieving their long-term goals from a realistic view of the market. Sherri offers one-on-one consulting and provides a variety of affordable webinars to support her clients through the process. She also facilitates a structured networking group that meets virtually twice per month on Monday nights. To find out more about Sherri's work, I will be sharing Sherri's website link shortly, but her website is resourcemaximizer.com. Email is sherri@resourcemaximizer.com. And you can follow Sherri on Twitter again for her amazing tweets. And her Twitter handle is @resourcemax. So without further ado, everyone, join me in giving Sherri a very, very warm welcome in the comments. Sherri, thanks so much for tuning in and great to have you on my
Oh,
podcast.
thanks so much, Dean. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I just love your tweets and everything you speak about on Twitter because all the advice you share is extremely practical and it just makes sense in the real world. And right away, I knew this is someone who has probably worked in talent acquisition or recruitment in the past. So again, thanks so much for joining me today, Sherri. So getting right into the questions, Sherri, like how do our habits and behaviors impact our ability to find employment?
It's really a big topic, covers a lot of areas. I I tend to boil it down to time management and communication. And so I can hit a few of those that have the greatest impact. I think procrastination is one of the worst offenders because if you're waiting too long to get the entire process started or waiting too long to follow up on leads, you miss the boat. The
Right.
other thing would be letting external factors set your schedule instead of holding yourself accountable and getting the things done that you need to get done. Um, I think the third is people that end up treating a job search too casually, when they're making a random effort or spending just a few hours a week addressing it as if it's a part-time activity. Um, and really, you need to put full-time effort into it and give it the same focus as if it were your real job, especially in the market we're experiencing now.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, Sherry. And this is something I've spoken about in the past as well. Like you have to treat your job search like it is a job in itself because that's the level of commitment that's required.
Yeah.
And just kind of a follow up question to that, Sherry. Why is it you think people kind of violate those three things that you mentioned, like procrastinate? Like why do people procrastinate? Why do people not plan out their job
Oh
search?
God, I'm not a therapist. Truly, I have this battle with my clients almost daily.
Yeah,
And I mean, the sad truth is there are some psychological reasons that prevent people from actually digging in. It could be fear. It could be depression. You know, there are many elements. Fear of failure, fear of being rejected. So the other flip side of that is just really making assumptions like, oh, I just have to throw my resume out there and that'll do it.
yeah,
And they're all in a battle for people to address. And I guess the key is whether someone will address it or not. I always tell my clients, I really can't address depression. I
yeah,
can't address fear. But what I can ask you is, what's the worst that would happen if you actually put one foot in front of the other and did what I'm asking you to do? Because you're already predicting the worst, so then why not try it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think prevents people from taking good advice? Like, is it that fear you're speaking about, or
I think some of it is, oh, but that doesn't apply to me. I'm
yeah,
special. And oh, I read on the web that I can just apply to 500 jobs a day and the numbers are going to, make it everything work. Um, so, why they do it, sometimes I have some clients that, yeah, but I'm smarter than you and I know better.
mm,
There are so many reasons that people come up with. I really can't speak to the why. I would say, when you ask why don't people prepare for interviews, for instance, one specific part of this, um, I think they don't prepare because they think all they have to do is show up and they'll BS their way through. But in
yeah,
fact, knowing more about the organization and really digging in and understanding your piece of the pie and understanding what your value is going to make you move forward in the interview process. But I think they think numbers of resumes really, or submittals, make the difference, or that they're going to just go in and wow the employer and they're going to get an offer. The notion of winging the whole thing is fairly common,
yeah,
so people, I guess, have to get to the point where that's not working. And unfortunately, some folks wait too long and they stay unemployed so long that their value drops exponentially, over what would have happened if they had started looking before their date of termination or, very soon after. I often, there are some people I refer to therapists, and it's kind of a team event because the therapist has to get into the why, and I have to get into but here's the action that you have to take.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you made such a great point that oftentimes people wait a little too long before they actually start taking this situation seriously, or seeing who can help them and all of that. And going back to what you said about interviews, I mean that's something I've experienced well, somewhat frequently as a recruiter. In that, I offer an interview preparation before the interview with my client.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I know, and but it surprises me that sometimes people actually flat out just refuse the interview
Decline it. That's
preparation.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, they're like,
Here's
oh,
five
oh
hundred
no,
dollars. No, I'm good.
yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? They're like,
It is.
oh, Dean, I'm, I've been around the block. I've been in this industry for a while. I know this, I know that. So there's no need for an interview prep. And then they go in and they flunk the interview over some
Yeah.
basic thing that I would have gone over,
Yeah.
during the interview prep.
Oh
So
God, I've watched it for 1,000 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's such a great point you brought up, Sherry. Now, Sherry, there's this saying, right? What is it? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Right.
Why is it important to plan for your job search? And what are two or three things job seekers can plan for in relation to their job search?
I think time management is really critical. And what I've seen over the years is that when people are not working, all of a sudden they are the one in the household who has to take care of everything that happens, as if that's how it's always been. And they take on that role. So, if they were working, clearly that would have been balanced out. And so time management is critical to look at your job search as if it is a full-time job. Let your family know, because you've got to plan time to research, got to plan time for conversations and then following up. You've got to plan your time for interview prep. Um, and then thinking about delays in the process, which inevitably happen. There are some recruitment process that lasts 3 months. So you might have to have
Yeah,
several irons in the fire. And then pad your time for the emergencies that do come up. Um, I think there's also an inevitability. People will zero in on one thing, and then all of a sudden, after months, a couple of other things pop up, but they haven't prepared. So it really is project management, time management, and recognizing that each of these steps requires time, and you can't take it for granted. It is just like a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And failing to plan is one of those things. Like I think many people out there, or many job seekers out there, and not all. I would say not all the blame falls on them, because none of us are really taught how to job search. At least my generation. I can speak on behalf of my generation. I'm not sure how it is for other generations out there. So definitely, a lot of people are winging it. A lot of people are just not putting in the effort to really plan out their job search. I mean, most people, the idea of job searching is just, okay, I'm going to go on Indeed, I'm going to go on LinkedIn, I'm just going to apply for a whole bunch of
Yeah.
roles, and I'm going to sit back and cross my fingers and kind of hope for the best.
You know what's crazy about that? You brought up something about the difference in generations, and it made me laugh. My generation was, we just have to bullshit our way through the interview and we're going to get an offer and that's it.
Yeah,
And as people age, they realize, oh no, that's not happening, and then start screaming age discrimination. And it's like, yeah, it's not really it. I mean, there's more to it. And then the next generation, there were jobs everywhere, so we don't really have to think about it. And in our day, it was apply to everything that showed up in the newspaper. Now it's on the web, apply to everything there. But if people paid attention, and I look at LinkedIn in particular, a job will post, and within 2 minutes, there are 200 applicants.
yeah,
What are your odds a half hour later? What are your odds 3 days later? And so that's truly not the best way to search unless you have some very unique skill or highly in demand skill and several years of experience. And what I've seen right now, there are tons of jobs that require senior level.
mhm,
I don't see anything that says, oh, we're happy with 2 years of experience.
yeah,
So unfortunately, the college grads over the last couple of years have been told from the previous couple of years, oh, you're going to get a job, you're employable, it's fine. And they all come out making assumptions without a plan. I really don't think their career centers set them up for success. At least my college grad clients tell me we didn't learn this in school. So they come out with these expectations that are unrealistic and then have to wait a minute. This wasn't included in school. I'm just going to do what they said, which is an apply on Indeed and LinkedIn
yeah,
and cross your fingers. So it's unfortunate because if you look back over the years, job search is a process. And I've been doing this for like a really long time. And the reality is there's nothing different. There is absolutely
yeah.
nothing different. The approach is exactly the same. The tools we use are very different, but the approach is the same. And so if you think the common denominator is the assumption
Yeah.
that it's all going to be easy. And I think that's promoted because people are making money somewhere off of that process. Don't
Mhm.
necessarily make money off of teaching people. Well, I guess I make money. That's my job. But as far as large companies, I haven't seen that produced in a way that's individualized, as a consultant would offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Sherry, like what is one thing that people can do aside from, you gave a great example. Like, you go on LinkedIn, sometimes there's like already 200 applicants for a role. What is one thing that people can do to kind of stand out or separate themselves?
Well, and I have a different methodology. I don't recommend that people try to stand out. My approach, I mean, you can stand out by having a very very clear and a clear resume that shows results, and you've talked about that on Twitter and also LinkedIn. But the background before you even get to that point is really planning your job search and including the research so that when you think you're standing out, and I put that in quotes, you're standing out for the right reasons. You're providing results in the areas that your audience wants to see versus what you think is most interesting for you. And I think, just that element of thinking about the audience instead of oneself when they're creating the resume and making sure that the language they use and the results they offer are clear and distinct. I'm thinking you can speak better to that part because you're the one on the receiving end, and you're looking at what stands out to you. I am kind of behind that, and I'm asking people to do research before they talk to you. I want them to do research to know what they're getting into, because I don't, if they wait till the time you contact them and you contact them cold, the odds of them being, clear and at their best are pretty limited, because you're catching them by surprise. So if they've done their research, understand the market, understand their industry, if they understand their roles, then when you do reach out to them, you're going to ask them some basic questions. Their preparation is going to allow them to respond clearly. To me, that's what helps someone stand out.
Yeah, that I completely agree with that, Sherry. That's such great advice. And you know what? Something that I like to kind of, the analogy I like to use is, you got to look at yourself as the author of your resume is like a book. Like you're the author of this book, and if you're not keeping your audience in mind, I mean, it's not going to sell any copies,
Yeah.
right? I mean, no matter how great your ideas are, no matter how excited you are about this or that, if you're not speaking to the audience, the book is not going to sell any copies. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing with your resume. So that's a fantastic point, and I definitely agree with that. We got Joseph Segal who says, "Thank you for this information." Hey, thanks for tuning in, Joseph, and
Hey,
appreciate the
Joe.
feedback. We got Aaron Bachman who says, "Great info." Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. Glad you're enjoying the segment. So, Sherry, let's talk about interviews. Like, why do people often fail to prepare for job interviews?
I'm telling you, I don't know the why. I mean, because to me, I'm a pretty logical person and I'm really direct. And so I present it as, if you think through your answers to questions and write out what you would say, then you can immediately see where you're going left.
Yeah,
If you wait till you get there and you go left in front of somebody, it's over. So why someone would not do that, I don't know. People say, "Oh, I don't want to sound scripted." Well, I don't want you to sound scripted. Obviously, if you practice, then the things you choose to talk about will be familiar to you, and you will have chosen the right words to save time so that you can articulate your value to someone. I can tell you that recently I had a client. We went through the whole process of I can't even tell you everything. He's very hard to place, a lot of background, but we got all the way to, he got called for the interview, and I said, "Okay, this is what you need to do." And we've only got the weekend to do it because his interview was the following Wednesday. And I said, "I want all these scripted out so that I can get your answers and edit." And he refused to do it.
oh wow.
And I said, "So, okay, so you're not following this part of the process. Are we like done?" And he said, "Well, what's next?" And I said, "Well, what we can do now." Well, oh, by the way, he sent me 12 pages of scripted answers the day before the interview while we were supposed to be talking. It's like,
Oh
yeah,
wow.
that doesn't work out. So he had the interview and he agreed to a debrief. And in the debrief, we got through 4 or 5 questions, and then blam, I could just point out in seconds. I said, "They're not going to call you." I said, "You've not answered why they should hire you for their need. You've talked about all these other things that were interesting." Well, they were engaged. And that's an unfortunate thing. People think that when they go to the interview, all they have to do is engage the audience and they like them. And ultimately, the interviewers may actually like you, but if they're not convinced you could do the job, then what's the point? They're not going to be your new best friend. So the unfortunate part is, it goes back to like the old school, I'm going to schmooze somebody and they're going to pick me. And that has not been successful, at least for 20 years now. The schmoozing concept, nope, we're done with it. So I just present it to people again. It's real simple. If you write out your answers, we can catch exactly what you're going to say to shoot yourself in the foot. You'll know exactly which scenarios in your history are relevant, and I can catch which ones are not. It's a real simple process. It's time consuming. I understand that it's really not fun. It's not fun for me to edit it, but it's a must do, so that by the time you show up, you're comfortable with that. And
Yeah.
so my clients that do that get offers. There. I mean, I guess that's the simple, cause and effect. So I'll go back to, I don't know why people are so resistant. I don't.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is quite a mystery. And I mean, if people can anticipate certain, I mean, when you start going for a certain amount of interviews, you're gonna know that there's certain questions that you
Yeah,
will be asked, and if you're not rehearsing your responses or working on a framework to respond, there's really no excuse. I mean, and saying that it's gonna sound scripted and anything like that. Even the greatest actors and actresses in the movies, I mean, they don't sound very scripted. It sounds very natural. Uh,
right. Because
and
they
imagine if
practice.
yeah, and imagine if they didn't practice or rehearse their scripts. I mean, it wouldn't sound natural at all. So it's kind of the same thing
Exactly.
with this. Like you got to rehearse. If you can anticipate it, you got to prepare for it and rehearse. So it's in everyone's best interest to do that.
You
We
know,
got some great feedback here coming in as well. We got
okay.
Baljeet who says, "Thank you, appreciate you guys. You share great insights." We got Dami Wright who says, "This is so rewarding. Thanks so much. Thanks for tuning in, Dami and Baljeet." We got Brandon Swanson who says, "Hi,
Hey,
Sherry.
Brandon.
Cheers." We got Michelle Keller who says, "Thank you for sharing this information." And we got someone who says, "Hi, Dean and Sherry." Awesome. And folks, by the way, if you have any questions for Sherry, start putting them in the comments. I'll get to your questions after I'm finished asking mine, but certainly feel free to start putting your questions for Sherry in the comments as well.
Dean, if I can just offer one other suggestion, when you said, well, people will know generally the kinds of questions you'll be asked. And of
Yeah,
course,
sure.
I'm glad to share them. You're glad to share them. But there's another thing that people can do all on their own. And that's simply go through the job description that you
Yep.
want to apply for and answer the question, tell me about a time or give me an example when, and just finish the bullet that they're asking for. So go
Yeah.
through the functions of the job, not the requirements, but the functions of the job. Ask yourself, um, give me an example of. And that's how you can prepare because that's ultimately what's going to happen.
Yeah, great advice, and I definitely think that people, not well, maybe not everyone, but I'd say quite a few people don't take advantage of really referring to the job description, studying it thoroughly, and figuring out, okay, based on this requirement, what are some potential questions they might ask me
Yeah.
regarding this.
Yeah.
So I mean, it does take some preparation. It does take some time to do that, but um, you got to prepare. Like you got to use your the job description as a source for preparing as well. Now, again, in relation to job interviews, Sherry, what are your top three success principles for really nailing the job interviews?
Um, I guess the first is, the preparation, obviously. And then the other components that I include is doing a recap while you're there to review. So, when they ask you, do you have any more questions? You come prepared with questions that will be about them, about the team, to demonstrate interest in them, not what's in it for you. But
Yeah,
then closing the interview, recapping. So, if I could, I'd just like to recap what we've talked about today. You said blah, 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 and this is going to happen by. And then always agree on a follow up date. When can I'm really excited about this. I'm anxious to move forward. When can I expect to hear from you? And if you've been working with the recruiter, but now you're with the hiring manager, you can say, when would I expect to hear from you or Dean? And then they're going to say, oh, you'll hear from Dean. And it'll be within the next week. And you can simply say, okay, if I haven't heard sooner, can I check in on and pick the day after a week? I mean, just use the information they've given you. And then in your thank you afterwards, and this is a big argument in the market. You don't need a thank yous. Thank yous are stupid. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't hurt anybody. Just do it. And the
yeah,
thank you should not be selling yourself and going through everything you've already said. It shouldn't be a repeat of your resume or a repeat of your cover letter. The thank you should hit just a couple of points of the last conversation. What did you learn from that? What did
yeah.
you now learn from that interview that makes you excited about this job? And then end it with, I look forward to hearing from Dean, after the 4th of July holiday. So you're putting it in writing. That way, when you check back, they're expecting it. And even if they
Yeah.
don't have an answer, it was an expectation. I think people are afraid to ask that question. To me, it's crazy. Why would you not? Well, that's
Yeah.
being pushy. No, it's not. It's being clear about what to expect. And if you think about it, if your job's a project manager, a program manager, a coordinator, whatever it is, aren't you going to be specific about when things will happen? So you're demonstrating your ability to manage a project by simply asking, when would I expect to hear back? And then doing so. The other part is when you do follow up, it shows that you're a person of your word. And again, they still may not have an answer, but it gives you that ability to touch base, to give them the opportunity to say, oh gosh, we had a little glitch and we're going to be postponing this for a month. Or so and so has been out sick, so we've had to wait something. It's just triggering that communication. And again, it's crazy how few people will actually do that.
Yeah, that is fantastic advice, Sherry, and I 100% agree with you. Like you got to set the expectations. You got to let them know that you're going to be following up at whatever date they say they're going to get back with a final answer, and it shows that interest, right? That it shows interest, it shows enthusiasm, it shows confidence. And I mean, I would definitely not. I don't see how that could be aggressive or pushy or anything of that sort.
I really appreciate you as a recruiter is telling the audience that, because I don't understand how anyone could perceive it as being pushy.
Yeah,
and again,
exactly.
you've set the stage by asking them in the interview, and so you're just following up. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pushy would be if you're like messaging me or calling me every
Yeah,
day. I
you
mean, that
nagging.
would be pushy.
Well, and you know what? That's the alternative. There are people who just write nonsense thank yous where they sell themselves until you want to
Yeah.
choke yourself. And then, well, I don't know when they're going to get back to me, and they start, tagging you. And it's like, well, if you ask them, they'll tell you. And if they don't ask you, then you can ask them. So, okay, do you think if I check back with you the middle of July, would that be okay? And then they can say, no, that's too soon. And then you can say, okay, how about August?
Yeah.
And then they can say, yeah, that'll work. Whether they mean it or not, they may say that. And then you do it. And then you leave it alone until they've agreed. So there is no, oh, I'm worrying about all this stuff. You shouldn't be worrying about your job search. At that point, you should be pursuing other companies and other jobs until you get an offer.
Well, I think that's a great point as well, because that is key as well. And I see people make this mistake. They're really like gung ho and excited about this one organization. They're really excited, and they put all their eggs in that one basket. So what you said right now is very important for those of you watching to pay attention to. You should be pursuing other opportunities. No matter how great the conversation went, no matter how great the interview went, it's very important to be pursuing other opportunities and keeping your pipeline full. So great point there, Sherri. Now, Sherri, since we were talking kind of on thank you notes and all that, how important is follow up, and how should people do it after an interview? I know you gave an example of the thank you note. What are some other tips in relation to follow up?
Well, I think that, again, I'll just kind of repeat what I said. I think that the intent is to set the stage in the interview. When should I hear back from someone, or agree on when they say there's another round of interviews and it's who would I be meeting with? You confirm what they've told you in the interview. And so the follow up would be, if you don't hear from them by the agreed upon time, you contact them as you've indicated, that you would. And again, when they say, okay, we've set up your interview for X, that would be your time to say, please let me know, if they haven't already told you, who will I be meeting with that day?
Yeah.
So that you can do the preparation. I think the key here is communication. And if you remember at the very beginning of this conversation, you said, what are the key points? Time, to me, it's time management and communication. It comes into every element of the job search. And so following up is simply, inquiring as opposed to demanding, and not nagging, just following up on what they've said they were going to do, and then asking more specifics about the next steps. I think that's a thing that people tend to fall short of. I'll say, well, who are you meeting with? Oh, I don't know. Immediately I'm thinking, why wouldn't you have asked?
That's right. Yeah. Very important piece of info right there, folks. Always ask, always know who you're going to be meeting with. That's very important. Now, going back to time management, Sherry, there are obviously multiple components to job searching. What are some ways people can better manage their time for all those required activities? Any
Oh,
additional thoughts on that?
oh, absolutely. The first and foremost is write out everything that has to be done. Stop making assumptions that you're just going to throw a resume in the hat and you're good to go. So from the very beginning, you've got to determine, I'm recently unemployed. I've got to approach the market. What do I do? And so you've got to write out what the steps are. And it would be, okay, I need to get my resume together. Yes, but simultaneously, you need to start contacting people and you've got to plan the time to prepare for those conversations. So you're not just blasting people with, oh, I need a job, everybody. It really is planning out who would I want to speak with. And I think that's the other thing. People, unfortunately, use LinkedIn, use Twitter to just blast out, I'm available, everybody, let me know. And it's like, actually, that's a passive approach. What
Hmm.
you could be doing is thinking through, where did my coworkers go? What have happened to other people in my network? Where are they working now? Are they those places I might be interested in? I got along really well with them. I think I'd like to be working in the same kind of environment. Let's go check. So you do your research to find out where people are working, then research those organizations. Certainly look to see if there are openings in your area, but then plan time for a conversation. And what I found is people are busy. Not everybody's going to be available this week or even next week. So you've got to use a calendar. So again, you've got to plan out exactly what you've got to get done and use your calendar. Then I recommend that you post it with your family, share it with your family, so they don't just take it for granted that at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night they're going to take you to soccer. You're going to take them to soccer practice because you have a networking conversation at that time.
Hmm.
Your contact has just gotten off work. That's when they're available. You don't cancel that because your kid's got to go to soccer. Plan it out, figure it out, get their ride squared away. And I think, again, it's shocking to me because to me it's very logical, but maybe it's not that logical to everybody. But it's a project, and you've got to think through, what's the equipment I need? What are the tools? What am I trying to create? So, as an example, what's it going to take to put your resume together? Have you been keeping track of your accomplishments, or have you been sitting, quietly in the background for the last 3 years and not done anything to update your resume? Well, that's a problem because it's going to be more time consuming than if you had kept your own scorecard along the way. So you've got to figure out, well, how long is it going to take me to dig through my performance evaluations and dig through emails, or what's it going to take? I think working with a professional to get your resume done helps that process speed up, because typically when I'm working with someone to help them with their resume, I'm asking the questions, and that helps them move forward. But it's their job to block the time, because I can't create a resume without their help. It
Yeah.
and you've probably received those resumes where the resume writer did it without the candidate, and you've got this resume that looks like a fiction story, or in a book where half the sentences are missing because all they
Yeah. Yeah.
did is a vague statement. Yeah. So you can't send resumes like that. You can't pay someone to send out a a document that has made up stuff. It's not going to work. So you've got to plan the time to pull it together one way or the other.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you're saying, Sherry, I mean, people should lay down the groundwork for their. I mean, people should constantly be prepared for potentially having to job search,
Yeah.
right? I mean, people
Yeah.
people go years without updating their resume. People,
Yeah.
and something I think both of us have spoken about on Twitter is the worst time to start networking is when you need a job.
Yep.
You got to be networking throughout your career. You got to be reconnecting with your recruiter contacts maybe every quarter, or if you're currently employed. The issue is people suddenly, they're in need of a job and suddenly they're scrambling to network and get everyone's attention and then fix their resume up, and everyone's like all scrambling around, and everything's just a total mess. So we have to be thinking like, steps and steps ahead. Like we need to be preparing for the job search even when we're happily employed
Yeah.
working for a
I
great employer.
that's, I think generationally, that's what's changed, because it used to be a million years ago. You had a job, you worked there for 30 years, and you got a gold watch and you retired.
Yeah, that's
And I've never seen it personally. And, that hasn't been the case for 25 years. And so as we see the market change more rapidly, that increases. And so it's just a fact that you get a new job. My advice to people is you start your new job, that's when you update your LinkedIn profile and your resume.
yeah,
And from that day forward, you're tracking your accomplishments so that your resume is in progress, so that, in 3 months when the company decides to merge with another company and your role is duplicated and you're not needed, you're okay. And it doesn't mean you start a new job without planning time to continue supporting your network. And my whole my networking group is based on that. That's why we've been around for 20 some years, because it's about the long haul. It's about retaining those relationships and making time to nurture your network, whether you feel like it or not. It's really a critical piece of career health. That's what I call it. And then, thinking it all the way through to retirement, because your needs will change and that job isn't going to work, maybe 10 or 15 years from now. It's too intense or it's too many hours. So you've really got to plan it out and imagine, what's the network I've got to build to be able to move towards my longer term goals. So it's a lot more thinking and less assumption, I think, than past generations have done. And I think the generations that came through, for instance, during the dot-com era, a lot of assumptions.
yeah,
We're going to get rich and we're going to be fine. Well, some people really were. And then there were the people that weren't. And then there were the people on the sidelines that thought, oh, I just need to go learn how to program and I'm going to have $100,000 job. And then they found out that they're not good programmers and they don't have any experience. So
yeah.
that's not going to work. What's plan B? So it really is plotting out your career, making sure it supports your life goals, planning the time to absolutely make sure you're doing the things you need to do to maintain that career health. Just the same way you plan out, what am I going to do to take care of my body? What am I going to take? How am I going to take care of my household? It's got to be thought through. It's not something to take for granted.
Great advice there, Sherri. And Sherri, before we're going to get into the questions from the viewers. So those of you watching, feel free to start putting your questions in. I'm going to go through all of your questions for Sherri. But Sherri, as we wrap up my piece in terms of my questions, can you tell the viewers a bit more about yourself and how you help people, your website, your social media, and also your networking group as well?
Well, Ed, I appreciate you giving my Twitter handle is @ResourceMax, and my website is resourcemaximizer.com. Thank you very much. I work with people one-on-one. My choice is to work with people from the beginning to the past the end of their career. I've been really fortunate to work with people for 25 years and actually work with their kids as they are moving into the workplace. And then I have a lot of clients that have retired, and I'm working with them in the same way to plan, what are you going to do after you're no longer earning money. In the process, I help people stay successful. So when that we pull plans together that integrate their personal goals, their family goals, to make sure that their work makes sense. And then I help them deal with their choices realistically. What are they going to be competitive for? What do they need to skill build on to get competitive in that area? And then I support them all the way through. So if they have problems in the workplace, I help coach them through areas of conflict or challenges they may receive. I help them prepare for performance evaluations. And then I have webinars to support many of these areas as a more affordable way, to present some of the information universally. I think the thing that I enjoy possibly the most is I have a structured, I shouldn't say formal, it's structured. We don't do anything formally. It's a structured networking group that meets regularly, and we have a code of conduct. It's basically requiring attendance so that people get in the habit of investing in their network. And I also have about 12 small groups of people, small groups meaning 3 to 6 people that meet quarterly. They have similar career interests or skills, and we talk about their goals every quarter to make sure they're on track. So it to me, the fundamental part is the planning and committing, and then having people around you to help hold you accountable, and then progressing. And I support that process with a lot of people.
Awesome, amazing, and I think it's amazing that you have that networking group and over so many years, and that you're even helping the kids of your clients. So
That
that's
that
really
is
awesome.
fun. It is fun.
That's awesome. So with that being said, Sherry, we have some questions from the viewers and
Great.
some feedback as well. We got Neha who says really insightful. Thanks. Great to hear that you found this session insightful, Neha. So we got Louise Johnson who says, Sherry, since there's so many applications for every job, what do you recommend doing to find a job? So you might have already kind of covered this, but any additional advice there,
Sure.
Sherry?
Hi, Louise. I think, the whole process of networking that we've discussed before is really identifying what are the things that I want to do and where are they getting done? Who do I know that's doing those kinds of things, or what organizations um, are are interesting to me, and do those functions exist within the organization? So what I'm describing is less about just randomly applying for a posted position. So I'm not trying to work against Dean here because he posts his positions and he's hoping people will apply. But from my perspective, people that have challenging paths in front of them are less likely to exactly match a job description or be the one that rises to the top. The people I work with may have some other issues that we've got to take into account. And for that reason, I absolutely promote networking as a way to learn about that, doing the research first and then talking to people. And then by the time you have figured out who, what, and where, it may be that you talk to Dean because someone in your network has worked with him in the past and knows the companies that he typically engages with, knows the kinds of positions that he, searches for. And then you're going to have a good conversation because you've come as a referral.
Yeah, definitely great advice there. And if I can just add to that as well, just because someone's a recruiter does not mean that, just like Sherry said, they might not be the most optimal path for you to get into the company or get an interview. A quick example, like oftentimes when I'm recruiting on roles, I might have someone who's transitioning from a completely different industry into IT. But generally, my clients, they expect me to find people with current or recent or extensive experience in the tech industry. So I might not be the right person to help, but hey, maybe that person might connect with someone directly at the company, maybe with the corporate recruiter, because keep in mind there's recruitment, third party recruitment agencies, there's corporate recruiters, which is different. So you definitely have to find those avenues that make the most sense. So
Well,
great
you know
advice.
what? I really appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly, I'm working with the high number of clients that I am working with, exactly that. They're transitioning in some
Yeah,
way. That's been my area of focus. And a person who's transitioning is not going to typically succeed applying to a posting. And so until you've started that bridge and developed some experience on that path, you know, that's not the approach I would take as far as applying. And that's why I said, when you have the right skills, and it could be 6 to 10 years of experience in a particular area, and you're matching, then that works. But the
yeah.
person that's moving from one area to the other, or and is unclear even about what their future is, it's a different path. And that's why I said time management is so important, because it's going to take longer to really ferret out the right opportunities. Although I'm going to tell you, I recently I started working with a client in the beginning of February, and I said, when do you have to go to work? He had not worked in 12 years. And I said, when do you have to have money? And he said, by the end of the month. And I met the challenge. We got him to work. It's not what we call a plan A job, but he had been just throwing resumes at posted positions. And I know nobody's going to hire you. And it's not the right approach. Here's a way to build the path. And so he's on his path. And I told him, this first job is something you're going to do for a year or two, but you're going to get tired of it. And the whole premise right now is for you to get a balance in your life, know what it's like to be working again, develop some current skills, and be networking over the next couple of years so that we can make that next move. So those are the differences. You're going to be working with those people with deep experience in a particular area. And the people who don't need to know people who are willing to open the door with a lesser position that help support their path, as opposed to a leapfrog all the way to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Luis, hope that answered your question. Thanks much for your question. Baljeet says, love the advice. Awesome. Thanks for your feedback, Baljeet. We got Dami Wright, who says, how do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Therapy. That's not in my area. Yeah, I think all of us experience it, and you have to talk it through with someone who's going to tell you what they're hearing and why they're hearing it. And I can say that I deal with it to some degree with my clients, but I can't answer the question, Dammy. I'm sorry for you because I don't know you. I'd have to know more about what you're coming from and where you're going to. And then maybe what I would do is help you develop the path to build your confidence and show you. I can tell you one way that's automatic almost all the time. When I work with someone to create a resume and I'm digging this information out of them, and I mean, just digging. When we're done, that imposter syndrome is gone because the truth is there. I'm not going to let them say something that's not qualified. I've brought it out of them and they've given me an example. And it's the best fun when they see themselves. It's like, holy crap, that's me. So really having a clear resume with results helps. But the other psychological stuff I can't answer.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on situation to situation. And
Yeah.
another thing I would add, Dami, is that imposter syndrome can be a sign that you're moving past your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're in a and that means it's probably a growth opportunity, right? Assuming everything else checks out, like like Sherri said, it could depend on your situation and all of that. But see it as a growth opportunity, assuming that you're in the right place and it's the type of role you want to get into, because that's how we each expand as individuals, is moving outside of our comfort zone, not staying in the comfort zone. So that imposter syndrome might be a great sign that you're headed in the right direction. So I hope that helps, Dami. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got someone says, made it here a bit late, but I made it. Hope I didn't miss too much. Yeah, if anyone tuned in late, the replay will be up immediately after the stream ends. So if you missed a whole bunch of the gold nuggets that Sherri was sharing, just wait until the end and you can watch the replay from the beginning. We got Ishara, who says, hey, Sherri, excellent session. Do you have any tips for recent international student graduates with foreign work experience, but no Canadian work experience? Well, Sherri's actually American. So,
Yeah.
either way, what's your advice on that, Sherri?
Well, I work with a lot of people that have moved to the US from different countries. And um, it really depends on what their area of focus is and what their degree was in their country. There have been ways that we can translate that information on a resume, so it may not look the same as what we call something in the United States, but we can describe what it stands for. And I've worked a lot of clients over the years. The only instances where I've had difficulty is when the person did not speak English. So that was the bigger challenge. And then they ended up having to start in lesser positions to be able to acclimate to the new work environment. Obviously, you speak English, that's not a challenge. But I don't see, to be honest, I don't see a problem with having foreign experience as long as you can describe it in a way that matches what someone's asking for. Dean, do you care where someone's experience comes from? Yeah.
No, I mean, and again, I specialize in IT. So, no matter where it is in the world, I mean, IT is pretty much the same globally. Like, so for me, it's not a big issue at all. So I think that's great advice there, Sherri. So it looks like that's all the questions we have. Again, for those of you who want to further connect with and follow Sherri, all of her links are at her website, which is resourcemaximizer.com. Louise Johnson also shared the link in the comments, so thanks for that, Louise. Sherri, it was such a pleasure speaking with you today, and you shared so much great information. Thanks so much for your time and all the wisdom you shared. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope everyone got value out of today's segment. Make sure you hit like, make sure you reshare this with your network as well. And make sure you follow Sherri and on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter. And definitely make sure you follow me as well for more job search and recruitment related insights. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Everyone have a wonderful rest of day, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.